You've probably heard every version of the answer. 3 sets of 10, 5 sets of 5. High reps for a pump, low reps for strength. The truth about reps and sets to build muscle is a lot simpler than the noise around it, but getting it right still makes a real difference in how fast you grow and how long you stay consistent enough to see it. Here's the short answer first. For most lifters chasing muscle growth, 6 to 12 reps per set, taken close to failure, for 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, is the range that consistently shows up across the research. That's the version you can act on today. Let's break down why and how to adjust it to your own situation. The classic rule of thumb splits rep ranges by goal: 1 to 5 reps for pure strength, 6 to 12 for muscle size, and 12 plus for muscular endurance. That rule isn't wrong, but it's more flexible than most people realize. Modern research shows that sets taken anywhere from 5 to 30 reps produce similar muscle growth, as long as the set is taken close to failure, meaning you stop with only a rep or two left in the tank. The mechanism that actually drives growth is mechanical tension and fatigue accumulated near failure, not a specific number on the rep counter. That said, practical considerations still matter. Very low reps put a lot of strain on your joints relative to the muscle growth they produce, and very high reps can feel miserable and make it hard to push close to failure before your grip or cardio gives out first. That's why 6 to 12 reps remains the sweet spot for most lifters. For compound lifts like squats, deadlifts, and bench press, staying on the lower end, 5 to 8 reps, tends to work well since the loads are heavier. For isolation exercises like curls and lateral raises, the 10 to 15 rep range usually feels better. Now, let's talk about sets. This is where a lot of people either do way too little or wildly overdo it. Research on training volume consistently points to a range of 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week for meaningful muscle growth. Beginners tend to respond well to the lower end, around 10 to 12 sets, since their bodies haven't adapted to training stress yet. Intermediate and advanced lifters usually need to push toward the higher end, 15 to 20 sets, to keep making progress. How you split that volume across the week matters less than hitting the weekly total. Training a muscle group twice a week with 5 to 8 sets per session works just as well as 3 times a week with 4 to 6 sets, as long as the weekly total lands in that range. Here's a debate that misses the real answer: reps or weight, which one matters more? Multiple studies comparing heavy, low-rep training against lighter, high-rep training find comparable muscle growth between the two, as long as both are taken close to failure. What matters far more than the specific rep count is proximity to failure, meaning how many reps you have left in reserve when you rack the weight. A set of 8 reps stopped 5 reps short of failure produces less growth stimulus than a set of 15 reps taken to within a rep or two of failure. Pick a rep range that lets you use good form and consistently push close to failure, and the specific number becomes a secondary detail. Training frequency changes how you split up your weekly sets, even though the weekly total stays roughly the same. Spreading 15 weekly sets across 2 sessions of 7 to 8 sets each tends to feel more manageable and produces higher quality reps than cramming all 15 into one long grinding session. For muscle groups that recover quickly, like calves or ABS, 3 times a week is often comfortable. For larger muscle groups, twice a week with adequate rest days usually works best. Time under tension, meaning how long a muscle is actively working during a set, is closely tied to rep range but isn't identical to it. For most training aimed at building muscle, a moderate tempo, roughly 1 to 2 seconds on the lowering portion and a controlled lifting portion, works well without needing to overthink it. Deliberately slowing reps down dramatically doesn't reliably add extra muscle growth beyond what a normal controlled tempo already provides. How this all changes as you gain experience matters too. In your first 6 to 12 months of consistent training, almost any reasonable rep range and set volume will produce noticeable growth because your body is highly responsive to a stimulus it hasn't adapted to yet. Once you've been training a year or more, your body adapts, and the same reps and sets that used to work start to plateau, which is when increasing your weekly set volume and paying closer attention to progressive overload starts to matter more. Advanced lifters, several years in, often need to periodize their training more deliberately, cycling between higher volume and lower volume, higher intensity phases. A few simple signs tell you if your current reps and sets are actually working. Are your working weights slowly increasing? If you're lifting the same weight for the same reps as 2 months ago, your current approach has likely stopped providing enough stimulus. Are you finishing most sets close to failure? If your last rep still feels easy, you're probably leaving muscle growth on the table. Is your weekly set count actually landing in the 10 to 20 range? Many lifters assume they're training enough volume without ever counting. And are you recovering well between sessions? If you're constantly sore or seeing performance decline, your volume may be higher than your recovery can support. Rest time is the piece people underrate the most. For general muscle growth, 60 to 90 seconds between sets is typically enough. For heavier compound lifts, squats, deadlifts, bench press, a longer rest of 2 to 3 minutes tends to work better, since these lifts recruit more muscle mass and tax your nervous system more heavily. Cutting rest periods too short across the board is a common mistake that leaves strength, and therefore muscle-building stimulus on the table. Not every muscle group responds identically to the same reps and sets either. Larger muscle groups, like quads, back, and chest, generally respond well to the standard 10 to 20 weekly set guideline. Smaller muscle groups, like biceps and triceps, often get meaningful indirect volume from compound lifts, so direct isolation volume for them can sit toward the lower end without shortchanging growth. Calves and ABS tend to be more resistant to growth in general and often respond better to higher rep ranges and slightly higher frequency. Let's put it all together with a simple example. Chest trained twice a week. Session 1, bench press, 4 sets of 6 reps, 2 to 3 minutes rest. Incline dumbbell press, 3 sets of 10 reps, 90 seconds rest. Cable fly, 3 sets of 12 reps, 60 to 90 seconds rest. Session 2, incline barbell press, 4 sets of 8 reps, 2 minutes rest. Dumbbell press, 3 sets of 10 reps. Pec deck, 3 sets of 15 reps. Add it up, and that's 10 sets for chest across the week, right in the target range, mixing compound and isolation work across a range of rep counts. A few mistakes are worth watching for. Chasing one magic rep number, there is no single perfect count. Stopping sets too far from failure dramatically reduces the growth stimulus regardless of rep range. Adding volume instead of tracking total sets often adds unnecessary fatigue once you're already in range. Resting too little on heavy compound lifts undercuts the exact lifts that benefit most from full recovery. And ignoring progressive overload entirely means your reps and sets stop producing results no matter how well chosen they were at the start. One more thing worth mentioning before we wrap up: exercise selection interacts with all of this too. Compound lifts that hit multiple muscle groups at once, squats, deadlifts, rows, presses, give you more total training stimulus per set than isolation work, which is part of why a program built mostly around compounds can often get away with slightly fewer total sets than one built mostly around isolation exercises. That doesn't mean isolation work is useless. It's excellent for targeting a specific muscle that's lagging or for adding volume without the fatigue cost of another heavy compound lift. But it does mean the two aren't perfectly interchangeable when you're counting weekly sets. It's also worth being patient with the process. Muscle growth from any well-designed reps and set scheme happens gradually. Usually visible changes take a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks of consistent training to really show up, even though strength gains can happen faster than that. Don't judge your program after 1 or 2 weeks. Give it enough time for the actual physiological adaptation to occur before deciding whether your current rep range and set volume are working for you. Getting reps and sets to build muscle right comes down to 3 numbers: 6 to 12 reps per set for most exercises, 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, and 60 to 90 seconds of rest longer for heavy compounds. Push most sets close to failure. Track your weekly set total instead of obsessing over one perfect rep number, and keep adding a little more demand over time. That combination, done consistently, will outgrow almost any perfectly optimized program followed inconsistently. Full breakdown with the complete weekly example and every common mistake explained is linked below.